I'm Rick Jordan with CNY Drone Services. I'm the operations manager here. So we primarily do spraying services using drones. We operate all across New York, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. Our current season for this particular property, at least as well, is going to be for gypsy moth, or spongy moth as the technical term is. So we spray a formulation of BT, which is very safe for people and pets, so it's very great to be using, in a residential setting like this. So far we've had, huge success with it, and we're back again this year to do it again. So spongy moth basically will completely defoliate the trees themselves. Defoliate means they're going to eat all the leaves. That's very bad, because if your tree continues to get defoliated year after year like that, some trees only do it for 1 year, it can actually kill your trees. A lot of the trees that you have too are irreplaceable. It would cost anywhere from $700 to $1,500, $2,000 to actually get those trees removed, and we're not even talking about replacing them. Trying to get a tree dragged in and growing it back up again, you can't buy time, basically. So difference between the helicopters, airplanes, and drones is quite simple. Drones are much more effective, but we're also a much smaller capacity. We're partnered with a couple different helicopter and airplane companies, so we kind of bounce work back and forth. They take the 200-acre plots, 50 acres. We usually do the residential ones, which are anywhere from a quarter of an acre up to 5-10 acres or so. So what's good about the drones themselves, for example, is when we're actually flying this, the props actually push the material down, and it pushes it through the canopy, so we're actually saturating the entire tree, as opposed to the helicopters and airplanes who just kind of coat the top of it, which is definitely good enough. It'll definitely work, it's effective, but this is kind of a premium version of that type of service, because we're doing the entire trees from the top down, and there's no place to hide for those critters. So the technology has been around probably for 5 years or so in the US. However, it's only been legal in the last 3 or so. So we were one of the very first adopters for this technology, going back 3 years now or so. We first started putting it all together. So we've been operating for several years now, doing very advanced flight types. These drones are not actually made to do this type of spraying whatsoever. The manufacturer is DJI, that's who makes these. I've been talking with them, and they were very confused how we were able to do this sort of activity and do it effectively and efficiently. So that kind of shows the level of technology that is there, that even the people who make the drones don't really know what they're capable of yet. But the types of flights that are required to effectively skim over the top of these trees and everything, you got to stay about 10 feet off the top of the canopy at all times, and you got to stay at a consistent pattern. It's very advanced and it's very difficult, but it's very effective. So it's kind of, the proof is in the pudding at that point. Where to begin on the licensing portion? So obviously you have to start with your normal Part 107, which is your commercial drone pilot license, for lack of a better term. You got to have your Part 137 operator certificate. You have to have your state issued pesticide licensing in all the correct categories. You have to have your weight exemptions. For example, this drone here, since it weighs over 55 pounds, is no longer considered a drone. This is considered an experimental aircraft, according to the FAA. Now, with that comes with dozens of more regulations that are not really applicable for us. For example, I have to apply to the FAA and write up a paragraph to explain why I don't have seatbelts for the passengers. Yeah, that's just one of many that we have to apply for relief for. So on top of that, there's insurance requirements, there's recurring training requirements, there's reporting requirements. The list goes on and on. It's a very intensive process, and you're looking at probably 10 to 18 months of training and certification before you can realistically even fly these things legally. It's very, very hefty. You can definitely imagine that this is not something that you can just pick up, buy, and fly and expect to be doing a good job. So it's really make sure that the individual or company that you're hiring, they're properly licensed. The most important ones are really the state issued pesticide license. If you're spraying poisonous material out of an aircraft that could potentially drift over to neighbors, you want to make sure that you have somebody that actually understands what pesticides are, how to use them safely, and to avoid any issues like that. There's just many different areas that have unlicensed operators working out of those areas, and unfortunately, if anything were to happen, they're not going to have any insurance to cover it. There's no guarantees of their work. A lot of times they're just trying to do this for a quick buck and not actually thinking about doing a good job. We operate with quality over quantity. We like to make sure that every single customer that we do is fully satisfied at the end, and if they're not, we go from there with it. So like I said, just kind of make sure that people are licensed correctly for what they're trying to do.
So what is the best or the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, obviously flying these things is pretty fun. It's more like flying a garbage truck, though, to be honest with you. But it's every area that we do is different. Every job that we do is different. It's just a very rewarding experience in general, just being privileged enough to fly these things. And obviously on top of that, coming back to some of these areas and hearing the customers tell us about how their trees are all still nice and healthy and in bloom, and meanwhile the neighbors right next door look like a wildfire went through it. So it really helps to reaffirm the services that we're offering, as it's justified. We're not just out there spraying stuff randomly and just trying to make some money off people. It's a service that is definitely being useful, and it's kind of the future for a lot of this stuff, to be honest with you. And we're right at the forefront for it, so it's exciting.